3 Lives 3 Worlds. The Pillow Book. Lower volume. Original work by Tanki Gongzi. English translation, Hamster 428. English editing, Rock Harlequin, Lily, Joanna Kuang. Part 4 The Shadow's Souls. Chapter 9. Junyo's prosecution day finally arrived on the 7th of April. Fengju vaguely recalled a mortal poem her aunt Bai Qian had read to her once with the intention of cultivating her spirit. This poetry line contained great spirit. Amid the twilight saw strong pines, turbulent clouds remained calm in their flight. Fengju was disappointed that she couldn't let her aunt witness her strong yet calm spirit during Junyo's beheading on Lingshu Terrace, even if she did acquire such spirit unwillingly. Rumor had it the picky saber never drank anything besides blood. For this reason, she couldn't toss her marvelous plan of throwing a blood pouch at the blade. Now that things had gotten to this point, she could only trudge on. And yet, she must ready herself to confront the tiger with her might and Shang Jun with her wits. Despite sweating profusely at the thought of touching the blade with her bare hand, there was no going back at any rate. If she was able to rescue the lovebirds in such stormy conditions, she could possibly make a name for herself. She only regretted having forgotten to plan this through with Zeiss while they were at the Shuiyu swamp. Fortunately, however, she reckoned Shang Jun wouldn't look for him these days. That day when she parted ways with Zeiss at the Shuiyu swamp's entrance, Zeiss said he was going on a long trip and would return to Qinan Palace in 10 days. If she needed something, she could go to the palace to look for him. She pondered for a moment and thought she should first write a letter and bid Cha Cha to take it to Zeiss once he returned to the Holy Palace. She would ask for his help to make this deception a success. Only then would this matter be considered settled. In addition to Zeiss's letter, she must also write to Chen Yat. And not just one, but many, many letters at that. She looked at her right hand, which was wrapped like a steamed meat bun, and sighed with a throbbing head. Of course Fengju knew Aranya didn't desperately rescue Chen Yat on Lingshu Terrace just to vex her father. According to what Mo Xiao said, Aranya was highly capricious. At times she was reticent, at times she was animated, and sometimes she was also carelessly casual. But if one delved deeper into her mind, she was actually someone with distinct likes and dislikes. For example, since Shang Jun and his queen had never liked her, she did not like them either. On the other hand, since Mo Xiao treated her well since she was young, she remembered always his kindness. Yet why did she show Chen Ye such consideration on Lingshu Terrace even though he had always disliked her? This was one of those really incomprehensible things. Every feeling in this world has its own logic, but romantic feelings are born for no particular reason. Once erupted, it can even take people's lives. What exactly happened after Junyo received her punishment on Lingshu Terrace in the past? According to Su Moi, Chen Ye came alone to Aranya's home on the 28th of April and was arranged by the old steward to stay at the side manor. Aranya practiced calligraphy that morning, then listened to music in the afternoon. In the evening, she debated Zen with Mo Xiao and did not see him. The next day, she took a few books to the water pavilion and spent a day there, still refusing to come see him. The day after, there was rain. Since the water pavilion wasn't a suitable place to visit, she stayed in her study to ponder chess games and again did not come to see him. At night, her old steward reported that on the first day, he had conveyed the princess's words to His Excellency the Archmage that he was a special guest of the estate. If the side manor was not to his liking, there were also a few garden houses within the estate he may frequent. Apart from the princess's chamber, he was free to wander anywhere at his leisure. However, His Excellency had not taken one step outside the side manor in the past 3 days, and was often seen frowning in a very sour mood. Furthermore, although they had gone to the Holy Palace as bade by the princess to inquire in advance about his taste and had prepared dishes accordingly, he actually touched very little of his meals. Not knowing what to do in such a situation, he had to report back. The old steward stuffed his hands in his sleeves and perked his ears to await her instructions. Arania was silent for a moment, then picked up a silk parchment, dipped a brush into the inkwell and wrote a letter. This was the first letter she wrote to Chen Yet. In her lifetime, Arania wrote to Chen Yet 20 letters in all. When their relationship sundered, these letters were sent back to her. After she died, they were passed on to Sumoy. He burned these 20 parchments before Arania's departed soul, however. Half a lifetime of sentiments had been nothing more than a wisp of smoke. Nonetheless, there were many sentences in these letters Mo Xiao could still recite till now. For example, the beginning of the first letter had said, "Having recently heard that Mengchun Estate is hosting a new guest, I would like to send my greetings. Having stayed at the compound for 3 years, I was afraid it would be deserted after my departure to the scenery's detriment. Comfort fills my heart now that I have learned of your lordship's arrival." In these letters, Arania pretended to be a female scholar who once guested at the princess estate, and who had left the estate the year before for the Royal Academy. She who in leisure loved to enjoy tea and wine, and during her time at Mengchun Manor had buried many good wine in the courtyard. Especially remembering a very good urn of plum wine which she no longer had the luck to enjoy, she wanted to gift it to him. Knowing guests were susceptible to forlornness, she hoped he would find comfort in the wine. The letter ended here. Every word was light, and she did not say anything more. At the bottom, she signed Wen Tian. Wen Tian was really a female scholar in the Royal Academy. In her impoverished early years, she stayed at Arania's home with her fame of 2 volumes of poetry. She was admitted into the Royal Academy through Zai's recommendation at Arania's request. But Wen Tian had never lived in Mengchun Manor. The manor was named Mengchun, early spring, because the beginning of spring was when the grounds were at their finest. Arania had also come here to stay each spring where she grew tea and brewed wine. The old steward deferentially received the letter after she finished writing. Arania remembered something and charged him, "If Chen Yet asks where this letter came from, tell him it was sent by a scholar from the academy. Don't mention me at all." The old steward bowed in acceptance of her bidding. Uncertainty rose in his heart, but not a trace of it appeared on his face. Arania had poured a cup of tea by this time. She added, "If he knew this was from me, he wouldn't read any of it. It must be bothersome to be confined here. It may be a small comfort to have someone he can talk with. But I reckon there aren't very many who can have conversations with him. There are perhaps only a few scholars from the academy." He looked on with some respect. Forging Wen Tian's name on the letter sure enough brought about good things. 3 days after the letter was sent, the old steward came back to report that in the past 2 days, the Archmage ate a bit more than the days before. After last night's dinner, His Excellency the Archmage even went to Boxen Pavilion to take a turn. The servants did not dare to come too close, but he did not stay for long. He wrote back a reply, and asked that it be brought to Scholar Wen Tian at the Royal Academy. Arania opened the letter. It was also a piece of silk parchment. Through Chen Yi's excellent handwriting, the content, a tepid expression of his gratitude, was quite simple. If this was anyone else's writing, such a simple letter could be misunderstood as a perfunctory courtesy. According to Chen Yi's temperament, however, he wouldn't even bother to reply if he really meant to be perfunctory. Arania's lips curved up, a smile hinted on her face. Her steward observed her expression and quickly brought out ink and paper, urging his mistress to pick up her brush. Intending to help him pass his time, she deliberately mentioned Mengchun Manor's study in the second letter. The book collection in that study was actually richer than in the room she was presently using. She had always personally taken care of the books there, and on the evening before Chen Ye arrived, had added some newer ones. Among those books, she was particularly fond of a few travel journals. The texts tended to be extravagant in their descriptions, and her annotations on top were particularly differing. She placed these on the bottom of the shelves, where no one normally paid attention to. Needless to say, she didn't mention these books in her letter. She only recommended to him several sets of rare archaic books. But when he wrote back, his reply 2 weeks late, he mentioned the fresh and interesting annotations in the travel journals. He assumed the handwriting was hers, and in exchange recommended 2 of his favorites. There was one day when Su Moi arranged an exquisite chess game he derived from 1,000 books for her to solve. She struggled to no avail. When her steward presented the 6th reply from Chen Ye, she readily described this consummate chess game in her letter to him. That afternoon, she received the 7th reply from Chen Ye. On 2 sheets, he solved Su Moi's exquisite game, then described to her an equally exquisite one he challenged her to solve. By late spring, the words in his letters had gradually increased. Even though they remained lukewarm, there was a noticeable difference from those in the beginning. According to the old steward's report, although His Excellency the Archmage did not let shown much expression these days, his mood was much more cheerful than before. Of course, he remained inside Mengchun Manor. Sometimes he solved chess games or sketched chess manuals, sometimes he brought books to sit by Boxen Pavilion, at other times he would walk and pause in the courtyard. Only this last activity of walking and pausing gave the old steward puzzlement over what the Archmage was doing. But Arania knew what Chen Ye was doing. In one of his succinct letters, he mentioned he found one of the old urns she buried in the courtyard, which he then divided into 4 white porcelain bottles. He drank half a bottle as he played chess last night. His guess was that she had fermented this wine using berries that had been soaked in frost, then sealed it underground for 3 seasons. Afterward, autumn's dried mustard seeds were immersed in the wine for half a month, then the liquor was infused with herbal scents and sealed underground for another 2 years. He asked whether this was the case or not. He guessed correctly, to put it precisely. Her steward presented to her a white porcelain bottle along with this letter, saying this wine was bade by His Excellency the Archmage to be delivered to Scholar Wen Tian. This was the 20th reply from Chen Ye. On a moonless windy night, Arania carried the white porcelain bottle and wandered all the way beyond Yuchen Manor. She made a leap onto a camphor tree. This tree faced Chen Yi's chamber. Inside, the soft glowing lamp had not been put out, casting Chen Yi's profile on the window. Arania found a place to lie peacefully between the branches, popped open her bottle, then gazed at the tightly shut window while she drank. When she finished half of her bottle, she coincidentally saw Sumoy wandering to the treetop. He took a seat on a bough beside her and offered a few clarifying words. "I've been teaching you for a number of decades. It's bad enough you never fully learned anything, now you don't even understand the essence of the term romantic. The pigeon post trick is passable, but don't you think drinking wine in forlornness is rather pointless?" "Teacher, your remarks are wrong," Arania lazily replied while lying still. "Drinking alone would be a little too forced if it isn't at the right time, in the right place, and with the right person. And tonight I am but a helpless person, in a helpless place, in a helpless mood. These sorts of helpless involuntary things are exactly like the natural rise of the sun and the fall of the moon, like the blooming and wilting of flowers." She gave a laugh, raised the bottle and took a swig. "Is this pointless, or is this romantic?" "Of course this is romantic." The word romantic had barely left her mouth when the small window burst open and out came a black figure. Arania's eyelids twitched. By the time Chen Ye faced the two of them from the distant wall, the white porcelain bottle had been appropriately hidden away within her sleeve. The black-robed archmage stood straight in the wind while the improper duo was either lying or sitting. Chen Ye frowned and swept his eyes across the pair of them as he indifferently said, "It's already so late at night, I'm sure you're here with certain counsels for me." Sumoy rose and stood atop the tree. "I'm afraid I'm not worthy to give you counsel. The night sky is beautiful tonight, so we borrowed this marvelous location to discuss literature and classics." He then added, "I heard your excellency is knowledgeable in the profound philosophy of Zen. I wonder if we may sit down for a little discussion." Arania laughed. "Teacher, you want His Excellency to sit on the wall to discuss philosophy with you?" "Discussing philosophy is a sincere matter," Sumoy replied in all seriousness. "I've heard that many years ago, Garuda by Lord Buddha's side could not be enlightened." Then he sat down with his nemesis on the same tree and came to realize the causes of their feud. Chen Yi's eyes gazed straight at Arania as he asked her an utterly random question, "What kind of wine are you drinking?" She was startled, but instantly restored her usual look. "It is a gift from a friend, but it's only a small bottle. I had just finished it. I'm afraid your excellency's timing is ill." Sumoy looked at the two of them, raised a brow and smiled. "The friend who gifted this wine will be visiting the estate tomorrow. If your excellency is interested in this wine, why don't you meet her to find out?" Chen Ye looked at him. "And who was it that gifted the wine?" Without waiting for Sumoy to answer, Arania's tranquil voice sounded, "Wen Tian of the Royal Academy, Scholar Wen Tian." When he heard this name, Chen Yi's cold solemn face seemed to change ever slightly. 02. According to Mo Xiao, his discovery of Arania's borrowing Wen Tian's name to exchange letters with Chen Ye was purely coincidental. However, his mentioning of the wine gifting that night despite knowing that Arania wanted to hide the matter from Chen Ye was actually intentional. At the time, he didn't yet understand his own feelings for Arania. He only thought if she wanted to have Chen Ye, he would help her get him. Arania had made the problem to be more complicated than it really was. She only had eyes for Chen Ye, but she was being too roundabout that he couldn't stand by to watch. When he uttered those words, all he wanted to do was to create an opportunity for Wen Tian to meet Chen Ye as soon as possible. Only then would Urania quickly come to a decision of her own. Either she could admit to Chen Ye that she was the Wen Tian in the letters and reveal everything to him. Where this romance would then head would depend on its fate, but at least this way, there was still a ray of hope. Or she could turn herself into Wen Tian and Chen Yi's matchmaker, handing this relationship to Wen Tian and completely severing the feelings she had for Chen Ye. No matter what she chose, it would still be better compared to her current dragging. In Mo Xiao's mind, borrowing someone else's identity and trapping herself in such love while subjecting herself to pain wasn't something his student should do. Feng Zhu thought if it were she would choose the first option. This was because she had heard a rumor that if someone became a matchmaker twice, it'd be difficult for her to get married. She counted on her fingers that she had already helped Dong Hua and Jihan once. If she offered help again this time, she would be done for. Urania was already married, however, so perhaps she could avoid future worries. Moreover, she had never been a matchmaker for anyone, so she might have wanted to have a taste. In short, after a sleepless night, she chose the latter. When it was barely dawn, she called Wen Tian into the estate. At Wen Tian's surprise, she handed her the 20 letters Chen Ye had sent. Except for what she felt for Chen Ye, Urania related everything in this matter from start to end to Wen Tian. She evenly composed a mouthful of poppycock. When Junyo was banished from the imperial city, she pleaded to me to take care of the archmage. You know I'm good-hearted and would naturally accept the request. But he and I had never gotten along. If the letters contained my name, it was bound to provoke from him more resentment, so I could only borrow your name. But I am busy with affairs in the estate lately, so I also cannot act on my will. I can't help but to ask you over. I'm wondering if you can take on this task and look after the archmage in my stead. There's no need to write about anything special, just miscellaneous hobbies and the mundane daily life. Wen Tian had received many favors from her in the past. Being someone who also understood courtesy, she naturally promised to help in her busy time. She suspected none of her nonsense. She watched Wen Tian open each of Chen Yi's letter as the latter gave a sound of praise from time to time. I didn't notice this before, but His Excellency the Archmage is actually a very intriguing person. These chess formations are also quite interesting. You're good at chess, Urania replied with a smile. I rarely bested you when you were still living at the estate. How great, you can discuss a bit with the Archmage this time. She paused then continued, but when you reply to him, you'll need to imitate my handwriting. I didn't give too much thought about it back then. Although I signed using your name, I still wrote with my handwriting. Wen Tian pressed her lips together and said, this shouldn't be difficult. At the gathering the next day, Chen Ye indeed showed up. Urania didn't pay any particular attention, but Mo Xiao was an attentive person to the bones. The gathering venue was therefore hosted inside a pavilion in the middle of the lake. This pavilion was one of Mo Xiao's proud designs. With only a small bridge connecting it to the lake, the pavilion was erected in the middle of the water, surrounded by lotuses on 4 sides. In the distance, it resembled a bud sprouting from the dense layers of lotus leaves. On each of the 6 upturned eave corners hung a wind chime. Each time the wind blew by, the bells would ring in a serenely zen-like way. It could be described as the culmination of worldly elegance, where no detail was left out. Unfortunately, the pavilion was named by Urania. Purposely ignoring all attention to detail, she bluntly called it the Lake Pavilion. Mo Shao pondered a while, figured this name could be considered interestingly straightforward, and acquiesced. Urania took a piece of unpainted red plank, a wolf hair brush, and some waterproof ink, then wrote onto the wood plank Lake Pavilion and hung it up. Mo Shao huffed, figured this sign could also be considered natural in its simplicity, and acquiesced again. When Chen Ye stepped into the pavilion, his eyes paused at the flamboyant characters on the red sign hanging above his head. Inside the pavilion, the maiden in simple white garments looked to Urania. Catching on, she faced outward and said, "My writing of those words was quite inadequate. Thanks to the princess's kindness, it is still hanging here till now. I must have made you laugh, Your Excellency." Chen Yi's eyes moved in her direction. Wen Tian's appearance could only be said to be delicate, but with the complementing ethereal water behind her, she actually looked quite genteel and elegant standing inside the pavilion in her simple dress. Chen Yi's eyes seemed to soften. He lowered his voice, "Wen Tian." The maiden smiled as she rose, "It is I." Later, Su Moi had asked Urania on what went through her mind as she witnessed this scene. But this later wasn't that much later. Chen Ye hadn't joined them for long before he was invited away by Wen Tian for a game of chess by the lakeside. Only he and Urania remained inside the pavilion. One busied himself with steeping tea by the small red mud stove, the other peeled oranges while distractedly keeping up with the conversation. It couldn't be discerned what she was thinking through her ambiguous eyes. What Mo Shao did was actually a little harsh, so harsh that it pricked her heart. The black-robed man and the white-robed woman by the lakeside were like a pair of sculpted lovers. Urania threw a peeled orange to Mo Shao, on her face remained a smile, although it was somewhat reluctant. Wen Tian is a good woman. Her knowledge is on par with him. Although her family isn't wealthy, he has also fallen on hard times. If Wen Tian accepts him right now, it shows that she isn't seeking splendor and glory. If they end up together, then what I'm doing today can be considered a good deed. Su Moi frowned, "The words you said to Junyo on Lingshu Terrace that day aren't the same as your actions today." Urania arched her brow, "Those words were only used to tease Junyo." She gazed to the distance where the black and white figures were playing chess by the lakeside and softened her voice, "He's a cold and proud man. But what can I do when he has good looks, superb power, great swordsmanship, beautiful calligraphy, good chess skills, and even exceptional taste and knowledge? He seems cold and proud, but he's actually quite attractive." She then laughed, "Have you thought that his hating me isn't really his fault? After mother remarried and gave birth to me and Changdi, she has committed infidelity. And so my blood and Changdi's blood are both unclean. This is actually nothing but a point of view. Everyone has his own opinion about these kinds of things, so I can't really say who is right or wrong. But since he has this way of thinking, he and I could no longer be. I'm actually a little envious of the way he looks at Wen Tian." A while later, she added, "But I also hope he can be happy." Su Moi handed her a cup of tea. "It's not beneficial to drag out this love. Fortunately, you still regard this matter with some lucidity. Now that we are at this point, you should put away your feelings soon." Arania received the tea and thanked him. This matter seemed to be set aside thereon, no word was mentioned again. They chatted about domestic affairs and waited for the lakeside couple to finish their game. From what the steward said, Chen Ye and Wen Tian exchanged 4 letters with each other after the Lake Pavilion meeting. Along with Scholar Wen's letters were 2 small presents, a white-crowned sparrow made from straw and an embroidered fan pendant with Jixiang pattern. Chen Ye reciprocated with 2 books. Chen Ye had chosen the books himself and charged the steward to buy them from the market. They were the 2 volumes of Kang Lang's travel journal. Arania was holding a teacup while feeding fish by the pond at that time. She inattentively scalded her tongue with the hot liquid. When she recovered, she told the old steward he didn't need to report to her their affair thenceforward. After all, Chen Ye didn't come to her estate as a prisoner. She then told him to buy the same 2 books which Chen Ye gave Wen Tian for her to read. On some level, Fengju found Arania admirable. Sometimes she herself wanted to cry or drink her sorrow away when she thought of her heartache, but Arania sent the person she loved to someone else. Arania didn't cry or drink, let alone sighing laments. She just did what she needed to do each day. If she were to compare herself to Arania, Fengju thought she was actually more lacking. She suddenly felt ashamed. But the heavens didn't operate according to one's likings. The heavens liked to brew a storm in the midst of calm. A few days later, Chen Ye headed out to Boxen Pavilion at night. Coincidentally, he came upon 2 lines of words on an armosia tree next to the pavilion. They were harvesting words that had been carved deep into the trunk. The bold yet soft calligraphy were quite profound. They were very similar to the handwriting found in the stack of messages he kept in his letter box: moonlight strewing across the starry yonder, wind weaving through verdant boughs. Let's drink like there's no tomorrow, and forget all troubles and doubts. Under the moonlight, his face suddenly paled when he read the inscription. It didn't include harvesting conditions or season. Instead, a slightly slanted engraving was found underneath the 2 lines. A single name stood by itself: Xiangli Arania. Fengju perked her ears, eager to hear the rest of it. But Sumoi only tapped onto the holes on his jasper flute. Everything was out by then, but if you were Chen Ye and you discovered the person who wrote to you wasn't Wen Tian but rather Arania, how would you feel? Fengju pondered briefly and ventured, very, very happy. Mo Xiao smiled and said, if that was me, I would be very happy too if there was a young lady who treated me well, and she was a beautiful girl at that. It was a profitable trade no matter how one looked at it. Fengju immediately inched closer as though she had met a kindred spirit. Well, isn't that so? Sumoi paused then said, unfortunately, the person Arania met was Chen Ye, and Chen Ye isn't me nor is he you. Arania had sat in the study to await Chen Ye's wrath. She was lounging on a low divan peeling melon seeds while reading Kang Lang's newly published travel journal when she suddenly saw a tree bark with inscribed words on it flying past her. Following the direction of its flight, she detected a black robe, followed by Chen Yi's calm face and its concealed fury. He looked down at her from above, in his eyes flashed an iciness. You were the one to write the letters, the one to ferment the wine, and the one to solve the chess games. Was it fun? Did you enjoy making a fool out of me? He took a step closer, the flash in his eyes intensified. When you see me being deceived and dragged around by the tail, yet still sincerely replying to each and every one of your letters, you must think, there's actually a day when he comes to this. Your heart must be filled with gratification. Arania stared at the inky words on her book for a length of time, then suddenly spoke. My teacher told me I should either put up a fight or sever the feelings in my heart. I've already severed those feelings. You shouldn't have come here. She thought for a while more. Even if you already knew certain things, you should still pretend to not know them. Shouldn't the two of us remain strangers as we were before? Chen Ye looked at her and chillingly replied, were we only strangers? I thought we despised each other. Arania's book-stroking fingers quivered, her voice a whisper. Have you ever thought that maybe I'm different from you, that you may hate me, but I don't hate you? Maybe I even really like you, and everything I did was to make you happy. She looked up. Before you knew I was the one who wrote these letters, weren't you very happy? He took a step back. You're jesting me. She seemed a bit distraught. What if I'm not? There are many possibilities between us, he said, his expression stiffening. Strangers, enemies, arch-nemeses, and any other number, but this is the only one that will never do. Arania looked at him for a long while, then smiled and replied, I could be telling the truth, or I could be lying. Perhaps I do really like you, perhaps I just want to tease you. Reportedly, Chen Ye and Wen Tian stopped their correspondence thereafter. Wen Tian once sent a letter to ask Arania. She simply said Chen Ye found out the truth, and she apologized for having pulled her into it. Wen Tian said nothing, she only replied and comforted her in a sentence or two. At this point in the story, Su Moi gazed to the late sky and returned to his room to rest for the time being. Feng Zhu had pondered many times about Arania and Chen Yi's ending, but she didn't expect their story to have such a sad beginning. It made her heart heavy, and also quite woeful. Because she had eaten too many buns before going to bed, she could not fall asleep. She took a walk around the garden, recalled Su Moi's story in the day, sighed a few long sighs, then finally returned to bed after the night dew had begun to descend. End of chapter 9.